What's up, YouTube and my fellow gamers? Welcome to another episode of Game Day, a reoccurring series that takes place every Tuesday where I play a variety of different games that I am passionate and excited about. Today we're taking a look at the Age of Decadence, an isometric turn-based single-player role-playing game set in a low-magic post-apocalyptic fantasy world, which is inspired by the fall of the Roman Empire. It's developed by Iron Tower Studio, and you can purchase it on Steam Early Access for $24.99. Now, this game has been in development for, I want to say, at least 5 years, but more like 8 or 9. I mean, it's been in development a very long time. I've been checking it out on the forums back when they were developing it, and it didn't really have a build to play. It's grown so much into a really hard RPG game. I mean, this game is very, very hard. And a lot of people that play this game not expecting you to be able to go and kill everybody like a typical RPG. That is not what this game is about. And I find it very fascinating because you really have to depend on the choices that you make. And some of those choices may not be the right ones, and you may be overwhelmed fighting too many characters that you can kill. And so you can kind of think of this game like Game of Thrones, where you have all of these different factions, and in this case Game of Thrones, all of those different houses trying to plot against each other, and they use other characters for their bidding. In this case, you're going to have a lot of factions that employ you for work, employ you for assassinations, employ you to protect other people. And then based on what happens and based on your choices, that leads into other quests, and then it leads into other things. So it's a game based on choice, and not every choice is going to be the easiest one or the hardest one. It just depends on what you choose. And there's a lot of story and background, and there's a lot of reading involved. And so this is not your typical RPG, but is a very awesome RPG that I am very excited to bring to you today. When you get to the character creation screen, when you start a new game, it's going to ask you to select your background, and you can choose between a number of different things: an assassin, thief, praetor, grifter, drifter, merchant, lore master, and various other things. And different backgrounds have different faction reputation, so that's what your starting reputation starts out with that faction. And depending on what you do in the game can affect a different faction's relation. It can improve it or decrease it depending on your choices that you make. And you also have a few abilities here. You can change the skin, face, hair color, and beard of your character, whatever you want to do. And also the starting equipment is different for the character that you choose. So whatever your character's background is, if you select a mercenary, which is what we're going to do, you'll notice that they have different armor than, for instance, instead of an assassin. When you get to the character creation screen, you're going to see a lot of different things. You'll have a lot of stats, your typical strength, dexterity, constitution, and so forth. And you also get to choose and distribute combat skills and civil skill points. Now, going back to the stats for a moment, each character background that you choose will have different starting strengths and weaknesses. So, for instance, mercenary might start out with 8 strength, but an assassin might start out with 6. And their dexterity might be higher for an assassin versus a mercenary, and so forth. A merchant is going to have higher intelligence and higher charisma than their combat abilities. So if you're playing as a merchant, you're going to use more dialogue options to choose, to get you out of fights and to manipulate other characters so that you don't have to fight, because you're not playing as a fighter, you're playing as a merchant. But for this case, we're playing as a mercenary, and so we're going to be able to choose different combat skills. So you can pick what kind of weapon you want to start out with. If you want to use a bow, you can put points into using a bow. Like, for instance, an axe will be able to penetrate armor better than a sword will. A dagger actually is better than an axe, I think, in that case, because you're piercing. You have a lot of piercing abilities using a dagger. The most important thing is to always use a dodge or block skill. Dodging and blocking is very important because without it, you're going to get hit pretty much every time, and you're not going to survive very long. So that's one thing I would tell you guys if you're starting out. Always put points into dodge and maybe even block as well. But I like dodge for a personal preference. Now for the civil skills, you have a lot of different things. A lot of these, like streetwise and persuasion, disguise, they all affect dialogue options. So it's not something like, disguise isn't something where you put on a different piece of clothing from the inventory screen. You actually choose the skill from an option in the dialogue. So that's when some of these skills come in handy. Lockpicking, of course, you can lockpick chests and sneak around if you want to sneak. Again, sneaking is based on dialogue. It's not based on what your character does in the game world. So the way this RPG plays is a lot different than your standard ones, and I really like that because it's more old school, and we really need a lot of that in this day and age. When you start out, each different background of the character starts in a different location. So for the mercenary, we start in this inn, and we basically start with some basic equipment, some gold, an axe, which is what we selected as our proficiency in, and then you're thrown into the world. And now you can go or do whatever you want. You can talk to different people. There's a storyteller here you can talk to and listen to some of the things that they have to say, and then choose different choices that different options in the dialogue if you want to listen to more. So there's a lot of lore that you can explore in the game, just like your typical RPG. So you're gonna be able to read a lot of cool things if you like that sort of thing. Now, usually each background has a character that they can talk to initially. In this case, for the mercenary, it's the innkeeper, who kind of starts off the beginning quests for the mercenary. And so you're basically asked to protect this merchant, kind of stand guard in front of the door and make sure nobody gets through so that he's not disturbed. Now you can see that there's a perception success. So because we had a success of perception, we were awakened in the middle of the night and we noticed a thief. And, we were able to throw him out. In this case, he came out through the window and killed our merchant with a crossbow. So now I have the option here. We can choose attack or we can choose wait. So if we attack, if we want to destroy this thief because he killed the merchant, we can do that. And so that initiates combat. And so now I have to try and kill this assassin. Now this is your typical turn-based strategy game. So you have different options for your attack. You can right-click on your weapon and choose different attacks. Based on what attack you do determines how much AP points it takes to use that attack. Depending on your armor will deflect points of damage. So at the bottom left screen part of the screen, you'll be able to see how much damage your armor is protecting you against, and how much actually penetrated through the armor. And so it does a deduction. So if the assassin hit me with 10 points of damage, but my armor blocked 8 points of it, then it would take 2 hit points away from me. Assassins have a really high amount of dodge, and they can dodge a lot of attacks. So you want to try to attack with an attack that is going to try to have a higher hit percentage, because if you always use like the power attacks, or in this case I'm trying out Whirlwind, which is a really cool skill that works really well later on in the game when you're actually leveled up in your sword fighting or axe fighting or whatever skill it is that you're using. It allows you to hit multiple opponents around you. Power attacks are also good. They can do a lot of damage if you actually land them, but with an assassin it's hard to land those kind of attacks. And so the game, again, is very difficult. You can see that the assassin killed me and now I lost the game. And this was the very start. So, you know, again, the game is not an easy type of game where you're going to just kind of roll through it and kill everybody. Let's go back to where the merchant was killed. Now, we had the option to attack or wait. What happens if we choose wait? So if we select wait, the assassin says I was paid to kill one, and since he doesn't work for free, we can lower our weapon and let the assassin walk. Now, because we let the assassin walk, we now have ourselves sitting pretty much in the room. Now, what we can do is actually go over to the merchant and see what he has on his body. And then we can take all of his items from him and for our own gain. Now, you know, if I for some reason just didn't pick the right skills at the beginning, apparently I just wasn't good enough to take out the assassin. Maybe if I reloaded the game a couple times, I might be able to kill him, but this is another option. We don't actually have to kill him. We can choose the other option and still gain some loot from it. So the innkeeper comes by and he's like, oh, you know, shit, that sucks. But when you tell him that you have the items that the merchant had, he says, well, let's go sell it to this other faction or this other guild and see if we can make some profit off of it. So we're going to take the goods to Kato, which is a part of a person in the 40 Thieves Guild. And so there's a lot of other story involved, which I'm not going to get into, but in the end, we were able to make some money off of the items that we had from the merchant and continue the story. But before we could get back to the inn, it looks like some thugs came out of nowhere, and basically we have a choice here to either fight them or walk away. And so, you know, it just depends on, you know, how well your character is. I mean, you might be able to kill these two guys, but we don't really know at this point. So I'm going to walk away and see what happens. When we walk away, the innkeeper says, where's Vardanus? And, you know, I just say, hey, he's dead. Well, you know, the innkeeper says, you know, that sucks, but let's keep on going, and offers more work to yourself as a mercenary. So, you know, the story can move on. You don't actually have to choose the good thing. It's not always about doing the best thing that you can do, which is, you know, protect everybody. You know, everybody's in it for themselves in this game, and so you really have to think about, you know, do I really care about this person enough to really fight these guys that want to kill him? Because if you don't, then let them have the person that they're going after and see if you can escape. You know, now that might not always be the case. You might not, you know, the smart thing to do might actually be to fight them, because maybe you run into another encounter after that. You know, you just never know. Let's go back to Kato at the 40 Thieves Guild. Now, as we were returning back to the inn, we encountered those thugs. Now, in the before, we chose to walk away, but this time, let's see what happens if we actually try to fight them. And so we're taken back to the tactical view here, where everything is turn-based. Now, I have this other guy, Vardis, who is actually helping, or trying to help, fight. So it's a 2-on-2 fight, so this might actually come through okay. But Vardis has no protection, and he's not really a fighter, so he's probably going to die pretty easily. Now, it looks like Vardis just went down. Oh, I think his name's Verdanus, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to keep focusing on this one thug who's badly wounded. When you use daggers, a lot of the thugs and assassins use them. They get a lot of swings because the cost for AP to use those swings is very low. I think it's like I think it's actually 2 points. So if they have high dexterity, which they usually do, then they can swing it about 4 or 5 times before their turn is over. So, you know, they can swing a lot of times, and they can do a lot of damage if they have a really high skill in it. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways to build your characters. I mean, you could be a mercenary with, you know, a sword. You could be a mercenary with a dagger. You know, you can be a mercenary with a bow if you wanted to be. I mean, it really depends on what your play style is, but not every way is going to be, you know, if I had a bow in this encounter, I don't know how well I would do because they're up close. I haven't really used a bow in this game, so I'm not sure if there's any penalties if they're really close to you or not. But you know, you have to kind of take that into account as well. But now that I've killed both of these thugs, I can loot both of their corpses and take all of their items. And I can also loot Verdanus as well and take his money if I want to. Now, each of these scenes are kind of instant, so you can, once you're finished, you pretty much just have to kind of walk to the edge of the map, and then it will start the storytelling again. Now, as we get to the edge of the map, it comes up and we have a couple different options here. So we can go to the inn and rest. We can go back to the tavern and have a drink with Kato. So we can choose any different things that we want. So when we talk to Kato, it looks like he lost 2 of his men. And the reason for that is because we just killed 2 of his men. And he's asking now for the money that we took from Verdanus and to pay back for the men that I just killed. And so, you know, if I had just gone back to the inn, I may have kept that 100 coins. But because I went back to Kato and chose this decision, we lost that money. So, you know, the choices that you make in the game are very interesting, and it really does keep the game interesting because everything is new and fresh, and you know, there's multiple ways to play through things. So if you play through as a mercenary one time, you know, you can go through all these choices differently each time. So there's a ton of replayability in this game. You know, and there's a lot of freedom. I mean, you don't have to go and just follow those quests. I mean, I guess you do if you want to progress the storyline, but of the faction that you're with or the guild that you're with. But you can go around and you can talk to merchants. You can sell your equipment. You can buy new equipment. You can talk to the locals and see if they have other things. There's a ton of other side quests you can do as well. You don't have to just follow the main guild quests that you're doing at the time. And so there's a ton of different items you can buy. Different ones with different items have different properties, of course, your standard RPG has. But at the end of the day, this is a very big world. I mean, this is just the first location that you come to. As you progress in quests and so forth, you'll end up traveling to different parts. And there's just 5 new locations added recently. So it was a major update, and there's 5 new locations. And if they're anything like the first location, I mean, I can really imagine that that there's going to be so much more depth involved. And so I'm really happy about this game. It's really great. And if you want a really good game, an RPG game that is very difficult, you know, not something easy that you're going to play, but something that is really going to test your limits, Age of Decadence is definitely that game. And lastly, I just want to say that this game has so much heart and soul. It's unimaginable. From the attention to the detail, from the characters picking up boxes to putting baskets on their heads to walking around and interacting with the different objects in the game world, it's so amazing. And Vince, the main developer, has been working on this game non-stop. All of the posts that he does on the forums, replying to comments, and letting them know what kind of game this is. You know, this isn't a typical RPG where you can just kill everybody like in Baldur's Gate. You know, when you got the best weapons and best magic and armor and everything, you could just roll through anybody. And that is not this game, and that's what I really like. I'm really glad that the game came out to Steam Early Access and is available to the masses, because this game is just really worth it. And for $24.99, it's really a steal. I want to thank you all for tuning in for this week's episode, and I'll see you again next week on Game Day.